Just the stats. Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morton, coming to you from the lovely city of Atlanta, Georgia. And Eugene, we have crazy news here with Trae Young being out for at least 4 weeks. Now, he has an injury, and they said they're going to reevaluate it in 4 weeks. That's never good, right? Because that's
Never
not
good.
even coming back. If you reevaluate it in 4 weeks, we have what? Maybe another month in this actual season or so, maybe.
Right.
Roughly around there. So it might get to the point where you just figured, why bring him back, right? If we're not going anywhere, what's the point of even bringing him back? Now, the biggest issue we're going to have here now, and people have already kind of saying it, is it time for the tankathon, man? Is it tankathon time? I think maybe it is. Maybe it is, man. Listen, I told you many times before here, Eugene, that in the NBA, and it's probably the same in the NFL too, because the NFL maybe even more so, because in the NFL you get the first pick. You just enter into the lottery for the NBA,
Right.
but you don't want to be on the treadmill, so to speak, of mediocrity in sports, because you cannot get a draft pick high enough to change your fortunes. If you're finishing 500 and you're always drafting around the middle of the pack all the time, you can nail a player. Don't get me wrong. Lamar Jackson went at the very end of his draft, and you have plenty of basketball players that didn't go in the top 10. I think Kobe was 13th, I want to say. So it's possible, but you really got to nail that player. So in this particular case, where we are with the Hawks, we're literally a 500 team. We're a middling team, man. We're middle of the pack. You can look at our statistics. I think we break down to about 500 over the last few years here.
Yeah.
That's not going to help us out a ton. And we're going to need to have somebody that we can get through the draft to kind of help us with the situation. I'm not even sure what kids are coming out. I haven't looked at that. I don't even start to look at the basketball players after March Madness, so I can really, when I really kind of get my first look at like these college players. So I'm not sure who's coming out. There's no Wembanyama this year, and we'll talk about him a little bit later in the show. But there's no Wembanyama this year. So is it time, Eugene? Is it time for the tank?
Well, to piggyback on your point about the draft, I mean, this year, all the experts are saying it's the weakest draft this year. So this would be the worst year to do the tankathon. But you never know. Like you said, there might be an international player out there that we haven't seen the clips on.
There's always somebody, right?
There's always somebody. Yeah, you're right.
It may not be like 3 or 4 or 5. You might not be able to, or like I said, the hype of a player like a Wembanyama, of course, right? And when Luka came out, Luka was well hyped throughout the year. I just don't see that guy, right?
Yeah, that's what we don't see right now. And that's the thing, we usually start hearing it about this time. This is the time you start hearing, like, obviously Wemby, we heard it way before, but I remember Luka.
About a year.
Yeah, and like to your point about, we knew about Zion, but we didn't know kind of more about Ja until the tournament.
He was playing for Memphis. Was he with Memphis? I forgot what school he played for. I know he's with Memphis now, but I forgot what school he played for. But he tore up the tournament, though. I do remember that.
And I do remember that's where he for him. And that's where he came onto the scene. So there may be that, but we got to do something. We like you said, we've been stuck in mediocrity land for God knows how long. So, and is it time to, like you said, tank? And then is it time to just strip this whole dang thing down to the stud and just start over?
I think maybe. We're just stripping down to the studs, getting rid of DeJounte, and just because down to the studs means Trae's gone. Not just injury-wise, you got to have to get rid of him.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, if we're not winning with him, what's the point? If we keep trying to put other pieces around him, it's not working. What's the other alternative? I just don't. I just know, how are we going to get a number one with DeJounte with our current roster? We're going to have to trade a lot of players, and maybe that's the way we do, and we get a number one. Spider's supposed to be. We know he's probably going to be leaving Cleveland if they don't go far in the series, right? Yeah, Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're going after him. I heard New York rumblings, but he's doing pretty good there in Cleveland. It'd be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, but he's kind of always hinted that he wants to go to New York. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think he comes to
New York's
Atlanta.
Always.
It's been on his radar
whenever he comes into play.
Right. So, it's just, what do we? That's the thing. We keep doing the same formula, and that's the thing. We've drafted well. Like we've talked about that ad nauseum. I think we've got good coaches in place. I think we got probably the right GM in place, and we have ownership that wants to win. So I just don't know what else you can do. I mean, he's a very listen. I love Trey. I have 2 Trey Young, T-shirts, but I just don't see like we said was before, the ball dominant guard win a championship. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how far Luka goes. I mean, Luka could win an MVP, but look at it. Look where he's at in the West. That they're just, I mean,
brutal. It's a brutal place to be. He'd be dominating in the East, at least towards the top of these, but they're in the West and they're still hanging on there. So I think it's possible for them to make that run. I just have a hard time putting them ahead of like the Denvers of the world. They're kind of improvement mode, right? They're in improvement mode. I got to see some of that actually come to fruition. I do like the fact I like what they did. I like that they got PJ Washington. I like what they did during what they've been doing the last couple of years, getting Kyrie, kind of making up for the Jalen Brunson debacle, which they definitely should have just kept Jalen, and that would have been solved a lot of their problems.
Yep.
I think they undervalued him there, and I mean, great for New York right now. But I being that we don't see who's coming through the draft, I think it's gonna be a hard ask to just blow it up all the way. I'm kind of with you in the sense that I think that's ultimately what's gonna have to happen, because ultimately with a lot of these franchises, it's a hard conversation for people to have in these when you're a fan of these franchises, because a lot of these players, these fans grow attachments to them, right? And they don't want to see them go. They feel like, hey, if we just did this and if we just did that. The problem is with that, if we just did this mentality, is other teams are thinking that too. And they're just doing things to make their teams better. So they're already starting on a higher ground than you. And then they're doing things to make their teams better as well. So you're coming down from mid, or us kind of being a completely mid team, trying to make our team better to maybe get up to where the 76ers are, maybe try to get up to where the Cavs are. Like, I don't see us making any moves to make us better than Boston or Milwaukee.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like you want to get to that next tier, and you thought maybe after that Philly series, now again, we always know the Philly series was just kind of a fluke that we went to the Eastern Conference Final, but you kind of want to hope that you build momentum on that, right? And turn that corner. So
it's been total opposite.
It's been the total opposite, right? And so it'll be interesting here in the next 4 weeks. Let's just say it's 4 weeks. Let's just say 4 weeks, he's cleared to come back and play. It'd be interesting to see in 4 weeks, how does the team respond? If it comes back, if they're like a 500 ball club, then you have to, without him, then what are you like? Then you kind of look, then you go, okay, well, what am I keeping for at this point? What am I keeping? Because at some point, you almost have to look at, the way I heard, and someone brought this up with Sacramento, when Sacramento had, I almost said Hero,
Turkoglu?
Yeah, not Turkoglu. Who's the point guard? Who's the point guard in Indiana? I can't think of his name. The point guard. Why am I drawing a blank? The sub point guard in Indiana.
Which let's look up.
Indiana Pacers.
Let's look them up and see, because we know that the Pacer that I know is Halliburton. And
Halliburton, thank you.
Right. Is Halliburton the part guy you're referencing?
So Halliburton,
I didn't think it was possible that you were talking about Halliburton, the guy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was talking about. I kept having Hero in my head. I knew it was totally wrong. I had the H right, but so remember when he was with Sacramento, and you kind of like, well, we have these. I
don't remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
So
how long ago was that?
This is not too long ago. I mean, what, 2 seasons? 2 seasons ago, right?
Wow. What a get for Indiana.
Right. So, but it was one of those things where they had 2 really good guards. So maybe they knew that maybe the one guard they thought was better, but they could only get the max return for the Indiana guard. So
correct.
My process thought is maybe that's the point you're at here, because they didn't move DeJounte in the trade deadline because they probably weren't getting anything for him. So maybe they're
probably going to wait it out and see if they can get a better deal in summertime.
And maybe you wait in the summer, maybe you get the better deal, and maybe you flip Trey for a lot more assets. You know,
If that's the move,
gonna,
and then we trade Trey, which is basically at that point, if we trade Trey, it's over with. Like it's
right,
toss it up
right.
in the air. That's really a blowing it up. I think a trade in DeJounte is a step towards blowing it up.
Hmm.
I think it's a big step backwards, but it's not the blow up that trading Trey would be. At this point, I would have to get a haul for Trey. Like it would have to be an incredible deal in
Yeah.
order for me to want to pull the trigger on that. But I do get, what do you do? Because I think there's certain tiers, I guess, certain levels in the NBA where you might have teams that are expected to win and they draw people, then they put butts in the seats, like your Lakers teams. The Lakers have an expectation to win and they still provide a certain product on the floor. The Celtics pretty good for this too. They have an expectation that they're going to be successful and they put a good product on the floor. Sometimes you have these teams that are in the middle that are just average, but at least they got a star or two and they're showing up every now and then. They're not just like in the cellar dwellers. But I almost kind of wonder if we'd be better off being like San Antonio. You know, when San Antonio will win Wembanyama situation. So San Antonio is completely losing record. They're a disaster record-wise. However, you can't look at what Victor's doing this year and not feel good for them. Like even it's the best I feel about a team doing horrible is the San Antonio Spurs, because you look and you say, man, we got a guy. We got a guy, man. And now we just need to figure it out from there. I think it's much easier to figure out when you know, okay, you got a guy here, right?
You got to have a guy, right?
Can be the best player on a championship team. He's coming across to me like that. Like he can be the best player on a championship team. Of course, with the help that he would need, but you see certain guys, you think, oh man, that's a guy. I feel like my guy Ant, who's from Atlanta, Georgia, Anthony Edwards, man. I think he can be the best guy on a championship team.
Right.
I think he can. I think he's showing that, like, yo, I think Ant is an amazing player, and he's looking like he could be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
The issue I have with Trey is looking like he would be that great second guy, a Kyrie Irving to LeBron James type. Like, you know what I mean? He'd be a great Klay Thompson to a Steph Curry type. You know what I mean? Like, he'd be a great second guy on a team. But I don't know if he can be the driving force, being that he has been the driving force here for the last, 5 years is a pretty decent sample size. I think he's been here 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, we have enough sample size to know he's a great player. He's just not. I don't think he's excellent player, right? Like you just nailed it. I just don't think he can lead a team to a championship. Like look at all those LeBron. Look. I know this is bad. This is a bad comparison. I'm not trying to compare him to LeBron as bad, but look at those LeBron years. Look at LeBron took some of the weakest players to an NBA Finals.
The Boobie Gibson teams,
right? You know? And Wally Zerbiak was, I think, one of those squads too, right? So it's just
they got blown out by the Spurs when reality came back to them against the Spurs, but he got them there. I think that's one of his best years, as a matter of fact. Like that goes into LeBron's hat, in my opinion, when you're trying to separate why LeBron is better than somebody else. You got to look at that team and say, could I switch you? Because could I switch you? Could I put you on that team?
Right.
And you take that team to the finals. I mean, that was incredible. Of course, they got destroyed by the Spurs.
Yeah, but again, you could at least look at him and you could look at him and go, he's the number one. And here's the thing, Luka could figure that part out too, right? Maybe he can have that number two where he doesn't.
He's looking like it.
He is
He's looking like,
but again,
he can, but they need some help there too.
And they can't. Kyrie's just not the answer. I mean, they didn't have to score. Like you said, the other night watching play the Suns, they damn near had to score 70, 80 points just to make sure they won the game, you know? So,
but when you got a guy like Kyrie, you're going to score those points, man. Kyrie's going to give you 20 to 30 cash. I love watching Kyrie play, man. I love watching the guy play, man. He's a baller.
In a 7-game series, though, it's not gonna happen, right? It may happen in one series, but
they just need another guy. They just need another guy. I don't know who the other guy would be. And the only reason I'm saying they need another guy is because you're going to end up facing teams that are very deep, like Denver and Timberwolves are ascending right now. Like they got some guys on that squad. Just not forget, Golden State is not all the way out of it. You know how I feel about the sleeping giant teams. They're not all the way out of it. They looked lethargic at certain points in the season, but they don't look like they're all the way out of it. So that's a team that could give you some trouble. And we still have the Lakers and the Suns in there. Haven't even mentioned Sacramento. Haven't mentioned OKC. You see what I'm saying? The problem is with Dallas. Those are the problems.
And
right there.
also the issue, like I think from like 5 to 10 or something like that, the standings they're so because when I watched the game last night or the night, I think it was last night, when Phoenix lost, they went from number 5 to number 8. So they were a number 5
Wow,
team,
one game.
one game. That's how tight it is. That's how its level of competition is in the West. In the West, in the East, it's really Boston. It's Boston. You look maybe Milwaukee. New York looks good. Cleveland looks good, but I mean, Boston has
No,
it. I looked at
76ers without Embiid is
it's
a
not Embiid.
shame,
It's
man.
yeah. It's
It's a
just I
shame.
can't
'Cause that
can't
would be
judge them.
what a good team that would be
Yeah,
if
I mean,
Embiid was playing with them.
Maxey looks great, but I looked at
Correct.
I was looking at standings today. Boston has a plus 10 point differential. They were outscoring teams by 10 plus points when they
Wow.
win. Yeah.
Wow.
So
That Porzingis thing worked out for them, huh? A lot of people are like, hey, that may
Porzingis,
not work out. But let me tell you what else I feel like worked out for Boston. My guy, Drew Holiday, man. Drew Holiday. I just put up a thumbs up, and thumbs up just came on my screen.
I
I
just
don't even
saw
know how
that.
that happened. Did you saw that?
Interesting. Yeah,
Maybe I
I
should
did.
do more. But I will tell you the Drew Holiday is undervalued for the defensive part of the ball he played. A lot of you guys don't want to play defense, man. They say defense is about effort. A lot of guys, especially if your guy has got to carry the offensive load, it's hard to go down there and defend when you got to score 20 or 30 of your team's points.
Yeah.
But I like having the Drew Holiday and Porzingis addition is great. But here is the problem with the Boston Celtics. The problem with the Boston Celtics is they will only be judged on what they do in the postseason. They've
Yep.
knocked on the door too many times.
So
And it's rare air. Listen, it's rare air for your team to be expected to win. I tell people this all the time when we're talking about their team. I'm talking to fan bases who teams win but can't seem to quite get over the hump.
Right.
I said, man, you're in a lucky city, or you're a lucky fan of a team that's expected to win.
Yeah.
Some of these teams, we're just trying to get to 500, man. Some of these teams
Yeah.
are just hoping for a play-in berth. Like that's our victory.
Right.
Getting into the play-in berth and getting maybe if the sports gods bless us, we'll get a first round win and get bounced out of here in the second round. But that's what we get to hope for. These other teams, we want championships from you. And I wish that was the expectation that I had for my Falcons and Hawks. But we do not have championship aspirations here. You could say it, I guess. It sounds good. But on paper, teams are just so much better.
It is.
No, in real life too. My bad. Yeah. On paper and in real life.
Yeah, paper in real life. And the frustrating thing is, it's like we've been fans of both of these teams for a lot. And we've seen the ownership before, and they want mediocrity, right? They want it to be mediocre.
As long as some of these guys sell tickets, they're fine. They're getting revenue sharing. They're like, I'm just gonna take my revenue money. I'm gonna live. I'll come to the games. I'll clap a little bit. I'll act upset. I'll storm off every now and then. But there's no expectation to actually win games.
Yeah. Versus now we have the right ownership that wants to win, especially Arthur Smith. Like, he wants to win a championship here. Like, he puts his money. He puts his
Arthur Blank.
Arthur Blank. Sorry, Arthur Smith. Oh, sorry. Ooh.
Goodness gracious.
Man. Goodness
I didn't
gracious.
want to end this show prematurely, man.
Really?
He landed with my Steelers. So I'm already kind of depressed about that. That's a whole nother show, man.
That's we could dedicate a show to that one. But Arthur Blank, at least I think what I've heard about him, he wants to write a blank check to get a winning team here, and he's proven it, right? He's putting, we could definitely nitpick on some of the coaching decisions, but player wise, we're seeing them bring quality players in, especially on the defensive side last year. So you're right, but we just need that expectation, and we need like I said, I think at the show prior to that, you just need someone to change that culture. You need that that coach to bring in that changes the culture, like your Nick Saban, like we were talking about Bill Belichick. Yeah, maybe he comes
Bill
in.
Belichick come and be a culture changer, and then go to the front office, do a Pat Riley,
right. So maybe he comes in for a year
or two.
Right. We go 500. Maybe we go to a playoff, whatever. Maybe we win the division, go 9-8. But he changes that mindset, that culture for you. For you just you burn it for 2 or 3 more years, and hopefully you hang around that 500. But like you said, he goes to the front office, and there you go. But he just changes your culture all around. I just never forget that. I think the story I told you and on the pod was about Nick Saban. Like he came in and was like, we need to take these posters down because none of these guys are in the NFL. Who we were recruiting coming in these hallways are not winning, are not in the NFL. We need to put guys that that are drafted in the NFL that these kids know, that they've seen them play. And just makes so much sense. And of course I heard he rubbed people the wrong way, but 7 championships later, I think he won the argument.
Yeah, I think he did pretty good. He did pretty good for himself. His other guy, Kirby Smart's not doing bad for himself in Georgia. So that people off that Saban tree is not doing bad. So I think he did a pretty good job. And I feel like that's what would help. Now, because I wanted to kind of touch on the future in the NBA. Because we were talking second half the second half, in my opinion, when we look at the second half of the NBA season after All-Star break, it looks like the first half of the NBA season. The guys that were great at the beginning, they don't look like they're any worse. OKC still looks like OKC.
OKC still looks amazing.
Boston still looks like Boston.
Mm-hmm.
They still look pretty good. Boston been beating teams by 50 this season. Got Vaughn out of here with the Nets. When you're seeing stuff like that, it just seems like it's a foregone conclusion to who we're going to see at the end. Maybe somebody ascends here, but I think anybody that's going to ascend would have to already be somewhat in a playoff hunt, right? You're not going to see the Pistons just rip off 20-30 wins, you know what I mean, and become relevant. Or you're not going to see even our team here in Atlanta, in my opinion, rip off 20-30, rip off a good second half of the season here. And put together a strong playoff run that will make you think that they can beat the top teams in the league. And I think that's where the biggest problem is getting over the top team hump. It's a problem that a lot of teams have had, especially in the NBA throughout the years. It was Jordan at one point. It was Kobe at one point. It was LeBron at one point. These people that you're going to have to run into. It's what Mahomes is doing right now. Brady did it. Mahomes is doing it. The guys you end up running into. You're going to have to see that guy eventually. For people who try to make their teams feel like they can make one or two moves and their teams are automatically better, you got to look at the top guys and feel like, are we better than those guys? Can we compete against those guys? And in basketball, with OKC, Denver, and Minnesota doing what they're doing out in the West, and with the Bucks and Boston doing what they're doing out here in the East, those teams still feel like the dominant teams here in the second half. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and look at the teams. Look what you just said. Look at the teams you said. What did they do? They built it through the draft, or it's like in OKC's point. That's the only way they had to do it because no one's coming there.
Yeah,
no one's coming.
Don't the Clippers wish they kept Shea, man?
Right,
but SGA now, but they got Paul George. I think Paul George got traded in that SGA trade, but man, if SGA was on the Clippers right now with what they got on that team, man.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Clippers.
But I like him. I think I like him better with OKC though. The Clippers, I think that probably worked out for both parties when I think about it. Because sometimes you need SGA is having kind of like a James Harden moment when he left OKC. Sometimes you need to just go somewhere where you can be the guy. And I think he's a good fit. And Paul George is a good fit with the Clippers. He's had some nights when he's disappeared on my fantasy team, but besides that, he's been a pretty good pick for the Clippers. And the Clippers are one of the teams that we didn't even name. I didn't even name the Clippers when I was talking about the teams in the West that are just, it's going to be hard to get through that gauntlet of excellent teams. So when you're on the outside looking in, you just got to look at all the teams that are just better than you, right?
Yeah.
And think like, what can we do to even start to, I'm not saying that you make one or two moves and now you're Boston, or you make one or two moves and now you're Denver or OKC, but something, you got to chip away at it though, right?
Right. Well, great point. It's like you want to at least keep chipping away to where you're ascending, right? But we keep chipping away and descending. It's like look at the great stories. Look at the Knicks. Look at the Knicks right now to when we beat them. They are a totally different team. They're a better team right now.
You're talking about a team ascending, man. The Knicks are an ascending team right there. That's a perfect example. Perfect example.
Right. Exactly. And so that's a team right there. Okay, yes, they're not right. Good point. They're probably not an NBA championship team, but they're probably one piece away, right? They're probably like, okay, what are we going to do?
Door, man. At least they're at the door. They could see the door. We can't even see the door.
Right. Exactly. And like you said, and then just look at and perfect example. Look at the Clippers. Look at Kawhi. Kawhi's been. I mean, I'm knocking on wood right now to say this. Kawhi looks healthy. I don't want to knock too, because I don't want to make too much background noise.
Health is his only issue.
Health is the only issue, but they got Westbrook, who's bought into coming off the bench, and he just comes in and gives just gives that energy. But again, you can at least squint your eyes and go, this team has a championship caliber to them. Versus,
Yeah.
and it's like, and that's all we want, right? That's all we want. Just like, can we see it building to something, right? We could see it, and and we can look back. We probably, I know we've talked about nauseam about this, but we can look back to that draft, and we should have kept Luka, because I'd rather have that situation and figure it out.
That's a
right?
whole, man. Do not get me started. Luckily, all
Yeah.
these episodes are recorded, and we have recordings going back to that time period.
Yeah.
And I definitely ranted about that. I've ranted about it several times to my friends. I ranted about it on this show several times. I'm not going to stir the pot right now and go into because I'm trying to close this show out in the next 5-10 minutes. I'm not trying to do another rant because we'll extend this thing, go for another 25 here or so. I don't know, man. Now what? It's kind of like we didn't draft Luka. I think we thought ourselves out of that.
Mhm.
Like a couple teams. If Luka if that draft was redrafted, he'd go number one.
He goes number one regardless.
And I don't even know if Trey holds on to that third spot. Maybe he does. I gotta look in to see. Maybe Trey still holds on to the third. Luka would probably just go number one if everything moves. But I think Trey, at least in my opinion, maybe this is just me being from Atlanta guy. I think Trey's still top 5, 10 players. Trey will go in that draft.
Yes.
And then Luka would still be down but it's just that Luka would have been one.
Luka would have been one. There had been no.
We literally traded the guy. We did a draft day trade. So
yes,
now that we do have the second half of the season to deal with, we could really only, in my opinion, see what happens with our team going from this point forward. See what's up with Trey's health, because I tell you what, he's not more of a trade asset now. I mean, now he's injured, so now we're gonna really have to see how he comes back from this injury. What it looks like, which I think that he's a young guy, man. He's gonna make full recovery, in my opinion. My uneducated doctor opinion here. I think that he'll make a full recovery only because he's a young guy and they didn't seem super concerned about it. It wasn't like, he didn't come out like it's season ending,
right.
Interesting.
Right. No, it's not season ending. It's like, I think it was like partial tear. It wasn't like something I think I read about too. It was like, it's nothing. I don't think it's anything, but like you said, if we get to that point, I mean, do we keep playing him? And I'm pretty sure he still wants to play. But what are we playing for at that point?
It depends on if we're going to trade him or if we just decide to throw the towel in on the year.
Yeah.
Go into tankathon mode and hope for just a good draft pick. And I don't know. I think we've had decent drafts, but they haven't blown me away. We haven't had blow me away drafts, and we haven't had any kind of drafts where I think, you know what, Boston and Milwaukee, here we come. And this is. We have our drafts to go through draft night, and I still feel like these teams are better than us.
Yeah. I mean, because if I think who was, because I think wasn't Okongwu the pick we got for Dallas the next year? I think that was what we got. So I mean,
I like Okongwu.
I love Okongwu, but you're right. But it's a franchise move decision not to take Luka, right? It's because
it altered two franchises.
It altered two franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could nitpick and go, they have the same resume, right?
Yeah, they both been in
Western Conference
final game. I want to say
both conference, right? But
both conference final appearances.
But I think the big difference you're going to see is who's going to win it. Who's going to probably win an MVP in the next 5 years? I think it's going to be
you can't even get Trey voted into an All-Star game. I don't even think that somebody has to get injured for Trey to get into the All-Star game. I don't think he's knocking on the MVP door anytime soon. I'm pretty sure Luka didn't need an alternate appearance, didn't need a lobby to get into the All-Star game.
No.
So it's a very big that's the difference that I think that we have. The biggest problem I should say that I have with these comparisons is seeing Luka on so many different lists, so many records he's breaking, having so many points before a certain age. I think the guy's like 24 or something too.
Well, they're both the same age. And then you're gonna, like you said, another great point is you're having to lobby to get him on an All-Star game. Well, you're gonna have to do the same thing if you're gonna try to get him on an All NBA team. You might get him to a third team, but Luka, number one all the way. Who are you taking above Luka as for the? I mean, he's gonna be a guard, and let's just point out what it is. I mean, I know they don't really do positions anymore, but he's going to be on an all NBA team for the West because he's an all NBA player.
Man, maybe trade second team, maybe
second
team.
But you have
Man,
Halliburton, and you have Brunson, you have all these kind of same
Lillard too.
guards. Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
that's gonna be a problem. So I don't see I don't s- I don't really see the path forward right now. I will say I will see kind of how the rest of the season comes out, and we'll kind of have more talks about the rest of the season and kind of try to figure out what can be done, so to speak, because I don't really know what can. I don't really know what I don't have the answers because, in my opinion, it's two horrible outcomes. You're either gonna blow it up a little bit or blow it up all the way. But blow it
Right.
up in both equations. You're either gonna trade DeJounte and do a semi blow up, especially if you don't get somebody back for him, or you're gonna trade Trey and DeJounte and just blow it up all together.
Right. I don't think you could do that. You have to do either or. Like I don't see you trade them both. Yeah, just it
I
wouldn't
don't
make
think you
sense
should
to me.
either. I
Yeah.
think that if you go with the complete blow up mode, you got to trade Trey. You go with the semi blow up mode, you got to trade DeJounte. Because these
Yeah.
are guys, unfortunately, who are going to garner any kind of value on your team. Like you need guys that are valuable to bring you back a certain value. So I think that's kind of where that's gonna land. But we do still have a lot of basketball left, so we'll see kind of how the rest of the season pans out. I do want to end the show real quick on I don't know if you listened. I listened to Justin Fields talk about him unfollowing the Bears. He was on a show, I think it was St. Brown's show. It was some podcast. And he was just saying, and he had a good point in my opinion, because a lot of people, they, especially in this generation, they'll unfriend the team. They'll come out with letters. Thank you to the city. I did all I could. I gave it all I could for you guys. Then that's to kind of put extra pressure on the team to like bring the guy back.
Absolutely. That's always what that.
Now in this particular case, though, that's not what he said he was doing, and I can't say that I 100% believe it, but it's not unplausible though, because he said basically he just got sick of seeing NFL on his timeline, and he got sick of seeing. He said he unfollowed the NFL and unfollowed the Bears because he said on his timeline he kept seeing pretty much himself, and you're discussed on your timeline, and it's like, oh, do we trade him? Do we keep him? Do we keep him? Do we trade him? Do we trade him? Do we keep him? That's got to be a lot wearing on a person, right? Like you don't want to be looking at that all day. So he said he's on vacation. He just wants to kind of get out of that. They asked him about the Falcons, by the way. He said Falcons got good skill players. Felt like we needed another receiver. It feels like we need one more receiver. And commented on how our defense was good this year. So he's thought about it a bit. I think the biggest issues that the only issue I have with Justin Fields is it's actually two. I don't know why I said only. It's two issues I have with Justin Fields. And that is one, I have to see the passing game get better. I cannot see those stats as they are in here and feel like we have a prayer against the better teams in the league. You got Dak over there throwing for 4,000 to 5,000 yards in Dallas, and we're going to compete with that with 2,000 to 3,000 yards. I don't think so. We're going to have to. He's going to have to make some strides as a passer. Maybe if he has the weapons, even though I don't think. This past year, I think it was a pretty decent year for him weapon wise. He got DJ Moore and did decent, but didn't set the world on fire.
No, he does have better weapons if he comes here. There's no doubt about that.
I think better skill players, especially if we hold on to them and we don't trade them to get him here.
True.
If we're able to hold on to them, then that would be great. And I think the other problem that I would have with Justin Fields is this isn't really a Justin Fields problem. It's more like a rookie contract problem. The NFL has incentivized people to take rookies because of the rookie wage kind of clock resetting. You got 5 years with these kids, so you can get a guy in here. Yeah, the clock resets for 5 years. I think we got 2 years roughly left on Justin Fields.
We would have
clock,
2 years.
I think.
Yep, you're correct.
Which is why, and the 2 years is why I'm not super upset about it. Despite the numbers, and we look at the numbers and being like, these, you're not beating the Brock Purdy's of the world with this. I'm definitely looking at the numbers and thinking that. However, I don't even think you're beating the Kirk Cousins or Jordan Loves of the world with numbers like what you're going to have to learn to pass the ball. I think in the NFL, you're going to have to pass for more yards. But that can be fixed maybe. But we have 2 years to see. So I'm okay with that for the 2 years. But if I can take a Penix or somebody like that and I'm not really paying him nothing for 5 years.
Right.
That's just tempting, right? It's tempting to do. Just looking at the 5 years versus the 2, no real knock on Justin there. That's more so just looking at how the rookies are paid now.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think it's great because I think everyone kind of has Penix falling to the second round. So let's just say
Second
we
round.
that's what I keep hearing. Just
Second
because,
round.
well, the
Is it
age,
injury
he has
history?
the injury history.
What is
Yes,
he, like
maybe
24? 23?
mm-hmm,
He's 23, 24. He playing
24.
like the
Yeah,
guy's 47.
that's old and that's old in NFL quarterback years. If
I
you're
think
20,
that's because people expect you. So, in my opinion, it's not that old if you're CJ Stroud. Like, so you got to
right?
hit the ground running. So if you get into the NFL and you hit the ground running, it's not as old.
Yeah,
If they take the natural 2 to 3 year maturation process, now the guy's almost 30.
right,
Right. So
right.
now I get where you're looking at a guy that age and saying, hey, yeah, I don't know, man. It might take you 2 or 3 years. But you'll have the guy 5, 6 years. I think when you look at quarterbacks, you shouldn't let that scare you, in my opinion, only because if you got a guy for 5 or 6 years that you have starting at your quarterback position, that's called a successful quarterback.
Yes,
We all
right.
want the 10 to 15 year guy, right? We all want the guy, Tom Brady, the guy that plays for 40. But I'll take a guy who plays for 7 years, 17 years. If he plays for 7 years, let's take the guy to 35. Eugene. That's not even super. Let's take him to 33 or 34, 35.
Yeah.
The guy would have like a 10-year career. I would
Yes.
not think that's crazy if he
No.
ended up being successful.
No. Yeah, and like you said, it's like it's one of those things too. It's like if we can't get one of those top 3 guys, get the guy that the ball looks decent coming out of his hand. Like I think somebody was like, I remember you and I talked about this at the when we watched a little bit of the combine. Stroud's the ball looked amazing coming out of his hand.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It just looked like so natural. That's what again, I know Stroud is a phenomenal thing, but that's when I watched some of the I didn't watch a ton of watching games. I watched more, the obviously the playoff games. That ball looked crisp coming out of his hands. That
Yeah,
no, he doesn't
he can
have like
sling
the
it, man.
touch he doesn't have like the touch Stroud does on like the short passing routes. But man, I feel like you can teach that guy that. I feel like you can like you get in, especially now with the way they spend the money on the quarterbacks. I don't know if he's sitting there like you said. If we can't move up and we're at 8 still, and he's there, I say we take him. Take a shot. Why not? It's not like we have anything better in our arsenal right now, sitting on that bench.
Well, I feel like too we would take. So from what I'm hearing, we wouldn't have to trade the 8th pick for Fields. I don't think so. A lot of the things, at least from what I've heard, I haven't heard a whole lot of the 8th pick being in play.
No, I've heard more second round, right?
Second round is what I've been hearing.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been hearing second round pick, which I'm hoping we stick to that because I don't think Fields will get drafted 8th right now, and I think that's a big thing that you have to look at when you look at players. What you would be giving up draft compensation for a player if you're picking. And so I'll give you an example. I have a total different feeling about my Steelers because the Steelers are picking late in the draft. So if you're the Steelers, Justin Fields looks very attractive to me because I'm like, we're picking so late in the draft anyway that I'm looking at Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and I'm like, I'm pretty pleased, Justin, Russ, somebody come to this team and save us because we went to the playoffs. And because of that, because going to the playoffs, we don't have a great draft pick. We don't have like a life-changing draft pick. Maybe we can go up or something like that. But then when I look at my Falcons and I look at where we're picking at in single digits, top 10, it's a different kind of strategy. I'm like, I wouldn't do Justin Fields for my top 10 pick. But if I can go back, I think Justin Fields would go first round if he went. I think at least that. I'm not sure. I think he'd go first round. It's still maybe towards the end of the first round, but I think he'd still go first round from just the glimpses that he showed, If you look at somebody of these college kids that are unproven and they show certain glimpses in college and you take them first round, I don't see why you wouldn't take a guy who showed glimpses in the NFL.
And no disrespect, you lost to Alabama. That's not like it's not like you lost to like Iowa State in the in the playoff
Correct.
game. You lost to lost to Alabama in the championship game. So that's not a bad thing.
What about your boy JJ McCarthy, man? You kicking the tires on that?
I've heard that. I mean, from the games I watch, I don't know. I see a solid quarterback. I don't see anything that's like setting the world on fire, I just unless I miss him, and we kind of both watched the playoffs. I mean, I thought he was fine, but they had a great defense. They had a great running game,
Right.
Yeah, I heard that like he's like supposed to be like considered one of the best, or he's supposed to be like in that top 3 conversation or top 4 conversation. I keep hearing,
man.
I don't.
I have him in my second tier.
Yeah, it's kind of where that's where I put him. I put him, Bo Nix, and Penix in that second tier group.
Correct. I had your boy Spencer Rattler at the end of that tier too, man. Like I feel like there is if you put Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, who I definitely would agree with those three kind of the tier, and then an outside tier, you put like your Spencer Rattlers of the world. I feel like there is one guy in there that's going to be good.
Yes.
I don't know which of those guys it's going to be though, right? Like you look at those four and you're like, one of you guys could end up really helping out an NFL team.
Yeah.
Which one of you is it going to be?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I mean, because the year before, like JJ was throwing it all over the place, and it could have been one of those things like, "Hey JJ, we don't need you to do that this year because we have a stacked defense, we have a great running game, we have our offensive guys. Just hand the ball off this year." And it could have been that. Sure. You know, we're doing recently bias against him, but I know the year prior, yes, he was throwing it all over the place. And I don't know if this year again, did he take a step back, or did they just like, "Hey, we're not going to ask you to do much more than this year than we did last year"?
Yeah, man, we'll have a lot more time to do some draft talks. I would deep dive into that too. I have some feelings about those quarterbacks there. We'll probably split some tiers there and do some more Mount Rushmore episodes here at some point too, man. We'll have some more of those coming here. This is Just the Stats. Radio Johnson, Eugene Morton. Check us out. Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. We also check out our Just the Stats channel on YouTube, and maybe one day I will log on to Instagram and do some stuff there. I don't know. I think TikTok now. YouTube is back in the house now. I moved back into YouTube.
Yeah.
And,
someone's taking care of Instagram for you, because I see videos pop up all the time. So someone's doing it for you. So I don't know.
Shout out to Bethany there, holding it down. And
He's holding your Instagram account down,
assisting her with that at some point in my life. Thank you for watching or listening wherever you may be. See you next time, guys.